Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome listeners, you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're on Big Little Small Talk. Today I'm talking to Amanda Dalton, who I will tell you what she does in her life, but welcome along to Big Little Small Talk, Amanda.
Thank you, Megan.
Now I'll just start by telling you I really enjoyed your brother's book, Lola in the Mirror, your brother Trent. No, I'm joking. You're not really Trent Dalton's sister, are you?
No, I'm not. But a lot of people have asked.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So tell me, do you read very much, Amanda?
Oh, look, no, probably not as much as I used to. I do love reading information and fact-finding stuff. So even if I'm watching a movie that's based on a true story, I'll pause the movie and go back and then get sidetracked reading the background of a certain person or an event. So probably more that sort of reading rather than sitting with a book.
Where do you think that's come from, that curiosity to know stuff, facts?
Oh, I don't know. I think I've always probably been like that. As a kid, even growing up, always used to talk a lot and ask lots of questions and, never content just to take that first answer of, because I said so, or always wanting to know, I guess, the depth of information behind things. Love to hear people's stories, true stories about people's lives or where they've been or how they got to where they are. I just find that really interesting.
You and me both, sister, and that's why we're here. So tell me, where did you grow up?
So I was born in Kingaroy, and then we moved around the state quite a bit with my dad's work. Dad was a bank manager, so we had quite a few moves. We spent time in Bundaberg, Brisbane, then a big chunk of time up in Innisfail in far north Queensland, then out to Dalby, and then back to Brisbane. So lots of different schools during that time, and got to meet lots of people, and I often wonder if that's where I find it really comfortable to walk into a new space and to meet new people, because as a kid going to a new school all the time, well, you just kind of had to be able to learn those skills and do that. So yeah. You
could really read the room really quickly. You knew who was going to be the boss hog and who you needed to avoid. And
yeah.
Where did you come in the family? Who else is there?
So I'm middle child, which is middle child, Scorpio, redhead. It's the trifecta. Typical middle kid. Kept my parents on their toes. I have an older sister, and she's about 2.5 years older than me, and then I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger.
Okay. And you're very close to your sister?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So what did you do when you left school? What type of work did you pursue?
So I kind of jumped around in a few different jobs. I pleaded with Mum and Dad. I did not want to go back at the end of year 10, which was quite common in the, mid to late 80s. If you didn't go to uni, well, if you got a job. And so I pleaded with them, and Mum just said to me, look, if you get yourself a full-time job in the Christmas holidays, then you don't have to go back. So off I set that day, scored a job as a full-time checkout chick at Woolworths in Innisfail. And I was doing that for about 6 weeks, and I got chatting with a lady who came through my checkout one day, and I was on the express aisle, of course. I was quite fast. That's surprising, I know. But anyway, off this lady went. We had a lovely chat, and then about an hour later she turned back up with a gentleman in a suit, and they wanted to have a chat to me, and they were from the local newspaper, and they were looking for an admin person, but also someone that they could train up as a cadet as part of the newspaper. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So that was kind of my next step from there. Did that for about a year, and then this is still in Innisfail. I just decided that I wanted to head back down south, so I jumped on a bus and went to Brisbane,
as a 16-year-old.
As a 16-year-old, which I'd grown up in quite a strict Christian family where my life was school and youth group, and so really quite protected. And so still couldn't believe that my parents I don't remember them trying to stop me, although they probably did. But off I went, rang my sister when I got to Roma Street and said, "Can you come pick me up?" And she came and picked me up, and we walked through the mall.
You would have been ringing her on a payphone at that
I
stage,
don't
would
even
imagine.
remember the logistics of it. It was it's terrifying now when I think of it. And I remember, I had $30, which back then was, quite a bit of money. And I bought a white pair of court shoes from Maya. Where was I going? Where was I wearing them? So, that was that part of that adventure. And within a couple of weeks, I went out to Kingaroy to live with my grandma, did a week-long Pharmacy Guild TAFE course as a pharmacy assistant, and as part of that did a day's work experience. And at the end of the day, I said to the pharmacist, who at the time was Ken Edwards, Green Spot Pharmacy, "Have you got any jobs?" And he said, "Well, you're the only one that asked, so the job is yours." So that was where I got into pharmacy, and then stayed in pharmacy for, about 15 years or more in a whole range of areas within pharmacy.
Okay, so tell me how we made the leap to working in sort of like a social work. I'm not sure what you were working in youth justice, were you?
Yeah. So I then later on moved down to South Australia, where I continued. Mum and Dad had moved down there. So I'd gone down there and was really only going for a holiday. But by this stage, I'm still only 17 and a half, not quite 18. And I'd gone into a chemist one day while I was down there and got chatting to the pharmacist, and he offered me a job. So that's where the shift came from Queensland to South Australia in Mount Gambier, and I stayed and worked in a pharmacy there and continued on from there. No, I stayed in pharmacy the whole time, off and on through, then we had 2 young children. I met my husband, we had 2 young children, and we were quite young.
Yeah. You were married very young?
Yeah. So had Jared when we were 19, turning 20, and then Riley came quite quickly after that. And Stephen and I got married in 1992. Yeah, so we were 21, so quite young. And we both progressed on. He was a builder at the time. I was still working in pharmacy. We had the 2 little boys. And then in about 97, 98, there was a thing called family conferencing was being piloted in Australia, and that was based on youth justice conferencing. So the training had come over from New Zealand. They were piloting it in South Australia, which is where you bring a young offender and the victim together, and you do a conference where it's based on, it's a legal process. And so for all of my friends at the time, I'm not sure why, but all of them were in South Australia Police. And they're like, "Amanda, you'd be really good to do this." So I went to Adelaide and did the training for that. But that was just something that I would do, these conferences when they came up. In the region, so in the Mount Gambier region, so they would send the referrals down, so Mount Gambier is 5 hours from Adelaide, so if there's anything in the region, then I would go out and do those. So that was where I kind of thought, I thought I wanted to join the police service, and so I kind of went down that pathway, and then right in the middle of that, I found out we were having this surprise baby, Isabel. The boys were now 7 and 9, so there'd been this huge big gap. She was a lovely surprise, but definitely shifted. I no longer wanted to be in shift work and being a police officer. And so I would continue to do this, youth justice conferencing work. And then around about that time, so Stephen had been studying externally, doing engineering through USQ, and he just said, this is going to take too long. I was, busting to get back to Queensland. So we sold our house, packed up and moved back to Toowoomba in January of 2000 with the 2 boys, and Izzy was 6 weeks old at the time. So that's how we landed back in Toowoomba. And then I think when she was about 6 months old, I went back to work, and I was working at Department of Families, Youth and Community Care as a youth worker. And then, kind of from there, I started studying as well as doing mainly youth work, a little bit of child protection work, and then my career in that just really grew from there, doing both study and practical work at the same time.
What were you studying?
So I started out with a Bachelor of Social Sciences and majoring in counselling, but I very quickly realised counselling wasn't my gig. I was better with if there was a problem there, and being able to think really creatively about the steps and the strategy to getting the best outcome really quick. So better suited to crisis work and crisis response. And so through all the work that I was doing, I did stick out that degree, but social work was definitely more, it fitted me more, and particularly in the work that I was wanting to go into. So I have about a 3/4 finished degree in social work. I've never had the time to finish it off, but always really, I guess, loved the theory behind social work. So find myself doing a lot of reading in that space, and my mentors are all social workers, so picked up a lot of theory-based methods and models behind the work.
So all the time you're doing this social work, youth justice, you're thinking to yourself, what I really want is what?
Oh, I don't know. I think I always felt really frustrated by systems, particularly working in large funded programs and also working within government organisations. I felt like I could see that, so many people could be better helped if processes and systems were streamlined, were simpler, were more user-friendly, that people didn't need to go to 15 different services to get all this help, that, it was all siloed and people weren't talking to each other, and, the person at the centre of whatever was happening for them was just pushed from pillar to post and re-traumatised with every step within that. And I think I felt really frustrated around what I could see as a really ineffective use of funding and of money. And that would really grind my gears. So that was kind of always in the back of my head, but at no time did I ever consider starting something or creating something. That came a little bit later.
So fast forward to 2019, you've cutting a ribbon, and where are you cutting that ribbon and what are you opening? Where we're sitting right now?
Yeah, so the opening of Protea Place Toowoomba in September of 2019. So 12 months prior to that, I'd actually made the decision that I was so disillusioned from the system. It might have been more like 18 months prior to that. So I'd managed the Haven youth accommodation for 4 years, and
explain to the listeners what the Haven is.
Okay, so the Haven is another fantastic locally grown grassroots accommodation program for young people who, for a number of reasons, can't live at home. So it might be due to safety, neglect, abuse. So these are not children or young people in care of the state. These are young people that maybe just went through the gaps. And so they support young people to re-engage with school or to remain at school and complete their education. It's a live-in program, so it's 24/7 youth workers based in a beautiful home out at Charlton on a property. and a really homely environment for young people. So that has been operating since about I think it was 1984, 85. The Caruanas started that up, so a local couple. They did go on to eventually get some government funding, which that's, but the Haven's a really great model for young people. So I'd done that for 4 years, and then as part of the growth of the Haven, that we amalgamated with Yellow Bridge, which was a really great step forward to secure the future of the Haven, because the costs of running this service were not covered just by the funding. So to be auspiced by a bigger org really was, the greatest thing. So that kind of brought me to a point in my life where I was like, oh, I think I'm done with youth work, but I didn't know where I fitted. So I jumped to a position managing a DV refuge here in Toowoomba, and I did that for 6 weeks, and I hated it. I just thought, this just doesn't align with me. It just didn't work. Looking back now, I was also completely burnt out, and we see this often in the sector where people will jump from one job to another in the same sector, and they actually really need healing themselves from vicarious trauma, or just being, it's a tough gig, this sector. And so I guess I wasn't recognising those signs in myself. And so then I jumped I decided to take a break, and at Christmas time, so I left that position, and we went and travelled through Europe with some friends. And then when I came back, I went and managed Salvo's accommodation program for them for 12 months. And it was when I was there that I was seeing all these women turning up, because even though we weren't actually an open office or an open shop front, our sign was at the front, and people automatically connect Salvos with help. And they've been around for 130 odd years, so the legacy of that is still very much alive. And so I would see so many women who would come and say, look, where do I go for support? I'm sleeping in my car. And I would have to explain to them that, our program was families and single men. And I would send them here, there and everywhere to charge their phone or have a shower. And then one day I decided I would actually ring those places that we'd all in the sector been told that's where they could go, only to find out that wasn't accurate. You couldn't just go to the pool. You couldn't just go to the library. You couldn't go here, there and everywhere. And so I was quite mortified that I'd been telling women, thinking that there were these practical supports that were there. So that was kind of when I started to look at this model of, I'm thinking, well, it's going to take way too much money to be able to suddenly create homes, but I'm sure I could do something around having that basic needs met. And it was around about the same time I did the homeless sleep out with Nat and Tiv from the base. And I had this, such a revelation, being cold and uncomfortable. And even though it's simulated in that safe environment and it is a fundraiser, it was enough discomfort for me to go, wow. I went home and had a hot shower and charged my phone. And then I went, okay, I've been handing out food vouchers and sleeping bags for, over 17 years in my career, and it didn't really solidify for me the discomfort. And I just went, okay, I now need to do something about this. And it was almost like this thing kicked in me it just then took over. And so I would spend hours and hours and hours writing the model based on all the stories that women had told me. They don't want to do this course or that thing or that thing. I just need somewhere to have a meal, charge my phone, have a shower, and connect with support. And so that was where it came from, that they were actually the ones that gave me the information. And so I always say that they are the engineers of this program, because it's their life story.
I'll just remind the listeners that you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're on Big Little Small Talk, and we're talking to the founder and CEO of Protea Place, Amanda Dalton, not Trent Dalton's sister. Amanda has an idea. She's been working in the sector. She realises that it's time she's going to have to stand up and do something, and in a completely unprecedented model. And what do you do?
I invited a stack of work colleagues, friends, anyone that I knew to my back deck one Sunday afternoon because I put it out, I just emailed everyone. I said, look, I've got this idea, but I'd love everyone's feedback. Pop over for wine and cheese and I want to share this idea with you. So that's where I told them about this idea and why. And I said, basically, do you girls think that this is something that would work and would you support me? And they all said yes. So within 2 weeks, we had a gathering and a meeting where basically we made a resolution, if you like, to formalise this group and that we should become an incorporated association. And then at that same time, they were having cabinet in Toowoomba. And so the Minister for Women at the time, Di Farmer, was in town. And so someone that was in that meeting on my back deck had a connection with her. So they said, look, we're going to pull together this little launch of the concept. Would you come and open it? And so that's how it happened. And Di Farmer came and we called the media and we called a few people and we held it at TSBE. And Di got up and said, I don't think I've ever launched something that didn't exist. So it was kind of, but it was the concept. And then from there, it was just rolling. It just went really, really quickly. But we spent that next 12 months raising the funds that we knew we needed for a part-time model of operations, finding a building, which is this building. Within a month, it was renovated and looks beautiful. That was some other community.
So tell me about that. So tell me about, how you got the building. Like, how do you go from having an idea to actually having a physical premises, getting it renovated, getting it furnished? How does that happen? A lot of people talk, a lot of talk, but you've actually done the thing.
So, Alison Kennedy, who's a good friend of mine, she actually went to school with my husband in Mount Gambier, would you believe? So she was on our initial committee as well, and she had said, look, we've got this little building at the back of the hospital foundation, come and have a look, we might be able to use that. And went and had a look, and it was in the wrong location, because it's in a back street, it was tiny, it needed a lot of work. And she'd asked Gary Gardner to come along and give a bit of an idea from a building perspective.
Mm-hmm. And he's from FKG.
FKG, yep. And so Gary said to me, well, is this what you want? And I said, no, it's too small and it's in the wrong location. And he said, well, do you know what you want? I said, yeah, I do. It's over on 131 Russell Street. I drive past it every day because I just live up the road. And but I think it's out of our reach. It's quite expensive, but it's perfect. The location, blah, blah, blah.
Was it a property for sale?
It was for lease. It had been for lease for a long time, 12, 18 months. And I just knew that it was right. And Gary said to me, he just looked at me and he said, well, you know what, aim high, go for what you know you need and what's going to work. And I'll put in a third of the rent for 2 years and we'll rustle up some other companies to help you cover the rent. Just go do that. So then we had this commitment from Gary Gardner and so he was the first person that really stood beside me, and he's a man of few words. He's so, and yet, excuse me, his heart for, I guess, the belief in this and wanting to support me with this idea absolutely blew me away. But it really was the thing that then launched us to really get to where we are today.
So in your mind, Amanda, you knew that women over 55 were the sort of the growing cohort of people who were homeless.
Yep.
From the work that you'd done. And in your mind, like, what did you want? You wanted them to have somewhere where they could do their washing, somewhere they could come and have a sleep, because you can't sleep very well when you're not secure, or you're sleeping in your car or sleeping on it. Somewhere where they could charge their phone, somewhere what did you have in your mind, really? Or you just still didn't really know?
Oh, no, I knew. I knew because these women had told me. So what I wanted to be was not just providing what in our sector is called dignity services, but that would be the soft entry point. That would be the front-facing point.
What does dignity services mean?
Dignity services are all those things like showers, laundry, a meal, clothing, toiletries, that sort of stuff. Them on their own is great, but when you put that with an integrated model of health and housing responses, you've got a really powerful machine, I guess, if you like, to really help people, because we know that the housing first model works, but when you don't have houses, it doesn't work. So in the absence, and we had that housing crisis barreling down on us, and I knew that. And I thought, well, we're going to be busy, but as time progresses, we're going to be even busier. So we wanted to be somewhere that could create a rapid response to housing for women. We don't want women to be in their cars or in tents or in shipping containers. So we work really, really hard to get a rapid response for crisis accommodation and then to get them into safe accommodation that's affordable.
How does that work? How when there aren't any houses, when there's a vacancy rate of less than 1%, how do you access houses?
So we've become really creative. And we also provide a lot of practical support for women. So as I showed you before when we did the tour, we've got the Welcome Home project, because quite often women have lost all of their belongings either through, they've had to escape DV or they've had to sell it all. And so what we do is we'll help them find a house and then we'll go in and completely set it up for them. That's all theirs to keep.
So what are we talking? White goods?
Everything. White goods, fully furnished, pictures on the wall, cushions on the lounge, food in the cupboard, so that woman can then focus on what she needs to do to get life back on track, and whether that's getting back into work or whatever it might be for her, we're going to help her with all of that as well. But we don't have to worry about how am I going to wash the kids' clothes, how am I going to keep the food cold. Like we try and take care of as many of those things as we can that we can be a part of. And it's done quite strategically. Because what we don't want to be doing is just throwing out and giving away stuff left, right and centre. We have a very strategic approach to this. We want it to be sustainable. We want our donor money to be able to show a long-term outcome and someone's life is back on track. Their house, they need a car, we put a call out, we get a car. They're back working, their life is on track. And we've assisted 54 women and children in 3 years with housing and accommodation. So we also work very closely with our local housing service centre, so Department of Housing. We have a number of community housing providers in Toowoomba. We work closely with them because they know we continue the support with our clients along the way. And we've also had some real success with advocating and supporting women into the private rental market, which is really amazing. We have a lot of people come to us and say, I've got a rental property, but I still need income for it, but I'd like it to be, I want to give back to the community, and I'd really like to be able to assist an older woman, a woman with children recovering from DV. So we want to keep the rent as low as we can. How can we assist one of your clients? And so we'll say, look, we're not property managers. Go and put it with with your preferred agent, and then say you would like Protea Place clients to be considered off a register of applicants. Now, we still have to meet the criteria with these people. So we still want a really good outcome for that person who that's their investment property. But we've had a lot of really great outcomes with that.
So Amanda, for people who don't know anything about Protea Place, would someone just turn up here any day and knock on the door? And if they've got children, what happens then?
Yeah, so we're open 5 days a week, but we have what's called drop-in 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, between 10 and 2, and a hot sit-down lunch at 12 o'clock. So on those drop-in days, women can just turn up. They don't need an appointment, and they can just come. And sometimes for many women, they don't know what they need when they get here because it's overwhelming. There is just too much. They need too much. So we just say, look, have a cuppa, have a nice piece of cake, stay for lunch, and then what we'll do is one of the workers will sit with them and we'll look at those immediate response things, and then we'll break down those bigger things. We've got time. So a lot of the work that we do is really making that woman feel heard and connected and supported, that she's got this little team here that will have her back and is going to help her navigate through all of these big things and all of these little things.
When you were showing me around, I said, I suppose you've got lots of volunteers, and you said, no, that model doesn't work here. Talk to me about that.
So we have some amazing volunteers who help with our events, fundraising events, and that sort of thing. When we first started off, we did have a volunteer model, and we had people helping with cooking, helping, with the packing up the toiletries and clothing. But we found as time went on, it just didn't quite fit with the model, partly due to, I guess, the critical work that we're doing in the space. It's pretty complex, and you really need to be the right sort of person to be able to manage and being in that environment. But also being really reliable, because we didn't have a backup. So if people call in sick, or they're going on holidays for 6 weeks, which you're a volunteer, that's fine, but it left us high and dry. And obviously we're managing lots of complexities in the space and lots of personalities. Sometimes it just wasn't a good fit, and because we're not just lining people up and feeding them, the volunteer model just wasn't appropriate for this space. So that was a learning that took time, yeah.
And how many employees have you got here now?
So we have 5 here in Toowoomba and 2 in Warwick.
Okay. And you had this event on the weekend, which was a runaway success. Tell the listeners about that. What happened? You're not getting any government funding, are you?
No, we still don't receive any recurrent government funding. We rely on fundraising ourselves from the community, applying for community grants and philanthropic support. And that comes in a variety of ways. So we have, a lot of people donate clothes because, let's face it, there's lots of clothes out there. And so we, had all these amazing clothes, and we would always say to people, if we can't use them in our clothing room, are you okay that if one day we have a garage sale, we sell it? And they're like, yep, absolutely. And then at sort of middle of the year, 2 separate boutiques closed down, and they offered us all their leftover stock. New stock. So we got loads and loads of really beautiful and quality stock and shoes and accessories. So on top of the amazing second-hand pre-loved stuff we had all of this.
Designer stuff, yeah.
So we were going to just put some trestle tables out the back in the car park, and then we realised, oh wow, we've got so much. So the girls from St Ursula's and the staff are huge supporters of Protea Place, so we asked if we could use the hall, the Salo Centre, and then we were like, because through the week we are all still running full cases ourselves, so we don't just get to stop and be full-time event coordinators. We run, we're still doing that work full-time, and then when the place is empty, then we do all the other stuff.
Just to pull you up there. So when you say you're running cases, what does that mean?
So we're doing full frontline work, all of us. So
you've got clients
who we are housing. We're assisting with, high-risk DV cases, high trauma, getting them housed in here in the space. So we don't have the luxury of, I guess, having an events person or a fundraising person. We do all of that ourselves. So basically, that's all done in our own time. Yep. So we're raising money for a frontline service, not just a complementary service to something that's already funded. So if we don't raise our funds, we don't get to keep our doors open, and all these amazing outcomes we get will stop. Yeah. So
you decided to have this event.
Yeah. So we put all the stuff out, and it was amazing. We just did it, advertised on Facebook as an event, and we thought that, you know, we might get some people there, and we were hoping to make, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000. We did an early bird, $10 to get in ahead of the crowds, and anyway, we tallied it up this morning, and we made $10,300.
So was it a bit of a free-for-all? Did you have people ripping stuff out of each other's hands or anything?
They were all very dignified, and yeah, no, it was a really lovely environment, and everyone just said what great value it was, because we wanted to price it. We didn't want to have to bring it back again. We needed it gone, and we needed the funds in the bank, basically. So we priced it really well, and then people were just overwhelmed, and then everyone was also really keen to give a donation when they were paying for their items. So that generosity has really helped us to hit this amazing level of impact.
Well, it's just truly incredible. I'll just remind the listeners that my name's Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and this is Big Little Small Talk. We're talking to the founder and CEO of Protea Place, Amanda Dalton. Now, Amanda, you are expanding your model. You've expanded out to Warwick and to Kingaroy.
Not to Kingaroy. So Kingaroy had reached out to us to come over that way. We just don't have capacity to do anything more. So Warwick is in a pilot stage. So it will pilot for 12 months to see if the community is able to continue to raise the funds to operate over there. Because just like Toowoomba, we have to raise the funds from our community to function. Warwick needs to do the same thing. And we can't risk that being, we can't have it being at the risk of Toowoomba. So we'll see how it goes. And look, we've got great hopes for Warwick, but at the end of the day, everything, the economy is really struggling, and Warwick is really struggling. So if anyone from that region is listening, please dig deep.
But Amanda, this is a success because you're here to drive it. Has Warwick got an Amanda Dalton?
Yeah, it's me.
It's you.
Yeah, so it's all Protea Place. We're all one organisation, but because we don't get funding, each community needs to raise the funds themselves. Of course, we help. I'm writing grants for Warwick all the time, so that's the same. But in terms of that incidental and ongoing community giving, that needs to come from Warwick. So, and we do need a bit of a push along because people are really struggling, and we do need to see some digging deep real quick. Otherwise, we will be reevaluating our future going forward at Warwick.
Do you get approached by government now and sort of almost celebrated in a way that you find a little bit irritating?
Absolutely. So I've had just about every housing minister in the last 4 years, women's minister, Department of Justice, you name it, they've all visited, they all love what we do, they all promise that they're going to go back and advocate for us. They don't ever promise funding, but they do, you need to be funded, this model needs to be rolled out everywhere. And they have their photo for Facebook, and they drive back down the range, and then it's crickets. We hear nothing. We're constantly told that, look, there's just no new money, there's no new funding. It is heartbreaking when we see the same big names just getting all the funding all the time. It's also quite heartbreaking where we don't see a lot coming into our region. And, we're not political.
Why is that? What's the reason for that?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of politics there, and we're not politically aligned, so I really avoid getting into that type of discussion. But we know there's definitely a political reason why our region doesn't often do well with new funding, so to speak. But I had a minister just here 6 weeks ago who absolutely loved what we were doing, but no, there's no money, and just this week announced that she's given money for the exact same part of the exact same model of Protea Place to newly be rolled out which just happens to be in her electorate. So, look, we try not to get too bitter and twisted about it, but, and look, to be fair, we would love to not have to rely on government funding because they then change the model. We would love a contribution from them because they definitely have a role in contributing to the housing, health and support of the community. That's their role. It is not the role of the community to carry the full load of that. So, yeah, I get quite impassioned about that because there is definitely a role for government, but we don't want them to take it over and ruin it.
And also, I think a lot of your sector say the uncertainty of the funding is the thing that kills you. You never know whether you're going to get refunded the next year. And I guess without, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but without your reliance on it, you just keep powering and knowing that you have to find those funds. So I guess that might lead me into my next question, which is what keeps you up at night time, Amanda? As if you haven't got a lot to keep you up at night time.
Yeah, look, I don't sleep well, just naturally, not a great sleeper. Sometimes I will really just exist on maybe 2 or 3 hours sleep. So I do have a lot of time to think. I mainly worry, as a parent, even though my kids are all adults, we always worry about our kids no matter what age they are. I worry about Protea Place. I worry about our funding. I worry about the staff and their wellness. I worry about my beautiful management committee. I worry about the women coming through the door. And I worry about if we're not here. You know, we wish we didn't have to be here, but I don't want to not be here because we couldn't function because we didn't have the funding or the funds. I'm quite happy to not be here because we're not needed.
Amanda, do you worry about... You've formed all those relationships with your benefactors and the fundraising and things. Do you worry about a succession plan? Like, do you worry that you might want to get out?
Yeah, I do, and so does my management committee. But the thing, and we have got a succession plan because I won't be here doing this forever. I've got some plans of things that I would love to do, that I will, you know, in some way always be connected to Protea Place, but I would love to, you know, probably create this model on a statewide system, and we've got some plans in place to maybe be working towards that. I'm not going anywhere for the next couple of years, but yeah, definitely succession planning in any business, and particularly when you've been the founder. But one of my biggest things is I never want to be that founder that stayed too long.
For sure. Just going back to jumping around a little bit, you said with your children are all grown up. Do you have any grandchildren? No,
I don't. No.
Yeah. And you're still with your 19-year-old
Absolutely.
sweetheart?
Yeah.
That's a miracle in itself.
Yeah, I know. He's the placid, shy, quiet one, and I'm the, you know, you've got to have that one of each, don't you?
I think, if it's a very mild way of saying you've got to have the chutzpah, which you obviously did from 15 years old and way before that as well. So what about in 3 words, if I was to ask you to describe yourself in 3 words, I am what?
I am exhausted. So I wanted to keep that real. When you asked me, you know, a few little things to have a think about, there are so many things I could say that I think people want to hear, but I think it is about keeping it real that we do get exhausted. And it's been a massive year. There's been lots of challenges. There's been lots of amazing things happen, but I have learnt just in life, but particularly in this sector, about there are no bravery awards for just soldiering on and not stopping and looking after your health. And so I am exhausted, and I am really looking forward to a wonderful break in mid-December. So that's my end goal, is to go away and have a lovely break and recharge and come back ready for 2024.
So I don't know whether your 3 words are I am exhausted or no bravery awards, but either way, both of those are very telling, and something that must be, you know, keep you up at night time for sure.
Yep.
Well, I guess you've almost answered this question. If I'm frightened of anything, it's what?
cane toads.
Oh.
As a kid that spent, 7 years in far north Queensland, and the cane toads up there are like the size of dinner plates. They are foul. And I got chased by one as a kid, although my dad said it wasn't chasing you. It just happened to hop the same way you were running. But I have an absolute phobia of cane toads.
Right.
Yep.
And your mum and dad, you said about them being quite religious. Are they still alive, your mum and dad?
Yep. So, mum passed away in 2006. So that was, she was only quite young. She was only 50, had just turned 56. And she got ovarian cancer. So it all happened really, really quick. And it was such a shock because in life we have been blessed that, there had been no real illnesses, and all us kids, there were no disabilities, and we really had a lovely safe family home and all of that. So that, and given that they were, really, really strong Christians and always had a really healthy life, and, mum had never been a drinker or a smoker, was not overweight, like there was all the indicators for a good long life, and so that really knocked the wind out of us. And my dad, so mum and dad had been together since they were 16 and 17. Yeah, so my dad is still alive and doing really well. He is just a very, very healthy. I definitely get my good dose of ADHD off him. Dad and I are two peas in the pod, although we don't really look alike. Very driven, very passionate, very intense. And
do you clash with your dad, or do you get on?
We get along really well. We clashed when I was a teenager and younger, because they were, he became a church pastor after the bank, and I got to that age of sort of 16, 17, and I just thought, nah, this is not my world. And they always say that the naughty kids are the teachers, pastors and police kids, and so I used to wear that as a badge of honour. It was all that was my badge that I could be naughty. So I did. I left home and was a bit wild and but had a beautiful, safe home that I'd come from. I wasn't running from anything other than it was a strict and caring home that I was this rebellious person that just wanted to find the world on my own terms, which I did. It was quite scary walking headlong into the world after that.
Imagine you as a parent now letting your 15-year-old go and do that. You into the royals very much? Do you have a favourite royal?
I'd probably have to say I still love Di. I think Diana got, she had a really tough life, and I liked her poise and all the rest of it. But I probably have a bit of a soft spot for young Harry too. Yeah.
Not just the red hair.
No. I just think he's been, media can take whatever they want and just misrepresent people how they want. So I just think there's a whole lot more to that story. And I think he's really rebelling, and he is really reacting to the trauma of losing his mum and being one that is not going to just sit there and take it. He will stand up, and that, people are going to knock you when you put your head up. So, and speak out. So, yeah.
Speaking from experience,
yes.
I would say this is a question I've never asked anyone, but I think I know you well enough that I can ask you. What's the song that you would like played at your funeral?
There's two, actually. The first one is a song by Robin Mark, and it's called When It's All Been Said and Done. If you haven't listened to it, go and have a listen on Spotify. It's a beautiful song. It was actually played at my mum's funeral, but the words of that song are exactly how I live my life.
Which is what?
Which is about, the song is saying, when it's all been said and done, did I do my best? And so for me, that's what always drives me is you can't stop now because you're still alive. You've got to be, getting out there, making a difference and really trying to have an impact with your heart and make life better for others. And when you're long gone, that's the legacy that you can leave. Yeah.
Oh, that's very, very powerful in the life that you've led, Amanda. And I can only imagine what else is coming up. What's your other song?
Hysteria by Def Leppard. So I am unapologetically the biggest Def Leppard fan you will ever meet. I have been to every concert that come in Australia, except I did just miss the one in Brisbane last Wednesday night because I was being the regional rep for the peak body for housing and homelessness for our region. So I missed it.
Well, we can let you off.
Yeah, I know.
Now, normally I ask people what song can't keep you off the dance floor. Would it be Def Leppard?
No, that's more singing. That's more big hair and singing. The dance floor, and I do like a good dance floor, anything 80s and 90s, early 90s, mid-90s.
You got a specific one that you...
No, I do like Aha or Duran Duran. But never a Madonna fan. Okay. So.
All right. Well, we can find something for for you to finish off. Amanda, I know that there's much more up in your future, but I have really, really enjoyed hearing what's got you to this point so far, and your motivation. You make me feel tired. You make me exhausted listening to you, but I do hope you get some rest, and I truly, with all sincerity, want to say thank you for the work that you do in the community. I mean, myself and all of the women that you have helped, I mean, truly, it's amazing.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And being my guest on Big Little Small Talk.
Thank you.
It's been a delight to have you today.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.